Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Haley and today I read the 10 most recent NaNoWriMo blog posts full of advice for NaNoWriMo so that you don't have to. Today I'm going to tell you all about those tips that I read and hopefully they will inspire you to write and finish your novel this month. If you've been struggling with NaNoWriMo and getting those words on the page, then I encourage you to watch this video because maybe there's tips that you haven't thought of or you just need that extra push to get you through the month. I hope that this video helps you reach your word count and have a very happy and successful NaNoWriMo. Let's get into it. So like I said, I read the 10 most recent blog posts all about NaNoWriMo advice, all about finishing your book and plotting and planning, etc. And here are the main takeaways that I got from reading all these blog posts at once. The main advice that I took away was find the writing advice that works for you and only you. Your mileage may vary. One author's advice may not work for you in the same way that it works for another person. Or you might disregard advice altogether and you might just focus on your novel and write. It's totally okay if any of this advice doesn't apply to you or your writing method. Honestly, I think that's like the main point of this, to find your own method and like to find your own writing purpose and your own way of doing that. So hopefully this helps you out. Hopefully this helps you do that. I know that there's typically two camps for NaNoWriMo of people or of types of writers that are the plotters or pantsers. Personally, I'm a combination of the two, so I'm a plantser. I read on the blog that it's supposed to be a combination of flying by the seat of your pants, and then of course plotters and pantsers. So if you didn't know that's what pantsers means, it was news to me. I guess the point is just to like figure out the plot as you go. The second main writing tip that I saw was have fun. Honestly, I think that's like the main tip that we should all take in with ourselves with writing in general and like throughout NaNoWriMo month. We have this competitiveness for trying to get to 50,000 words, and I know that some people are kind of ridiculous and they try and get to 50,000 words in like the first week or the first day, which is whoa. But that's so valid, and as long as you're having a good time doing that, then like more props to you. Kudos, man. Enjoy the journey, I think, is the main point of the advice that I read. And if you aren't enjoying it, figure out how you can make a change that lets you find the joy again. One article was actually really funny, and it had the "Are you winning, son?" meme from like the internet. I don't know where it's from, but it's like the dad who opens the door and the son or stick figure is on the computer. And this article was, "Are you having fun, son?" And I think that sums up NaNoWriMo and like the purpose of NaNoWriMo first. You know, there can be all these rules, there can be all this advice for having like a good NaNoWriMo, but honestly, if you're not having fun, then like what's the point, right? That article in particular made the great point that if you're bogged down, if you're not having fun, then maybe consider for a moment, is NaNoWriMo bringing you joy? Is NaNoWriMo sparking joy for you? I know that we can all get bogged down in like staying up till midnight, burning the midnight oil, but if those routines and if those methods don't work for you and like they're causing you more stress and more harm than anything, then I'd take a look at why you're doing NaNoWriMo in the first place. And if you're not having fun, then what are you doing? Who are you, Bagel Bites? To that end, I read the really useful tip that was put something exciting in your story. Now, this article used the example of like a dragon, which I totally support. We need more dragons in books. Science fiction, fantasy, doesn't matter. More dragons. Literary fiction, sure, give me a dragon. It can be like a scene to write towards, like your favorite scene that you're really hoping to get to, a moment, a kiss between the two characters. Just make it something that like gets you interested. Again, if you're falling out of love with your story and if you're like really want to recharge your momentum. In this huge pile of NaNoWriMo advice was keep going and don't lose momentum. One of the main points for this was always write forward, which I think is pretty cool, just a way of phrasing it. I like that way of phrasing it. But the advice was pretty much every time you go back and you edit something that you've already written, you're essentially writing backwards. They really tried to mention and prioritize like keep moving forward. I think that's a Walt Disney quote, actually. I think that's what I remember it from, like the Meet the Robinsons movie. Anyways, for NaNoWriMo, this author made the really great point for putting new words on the page every day, which means resisting the urge to edit words that you've already written. If you're like the type of writer who just doesn't stop, then that's great. That's great. That's what you need to like succeed at NaNoWriMo. But if you're the type to go back and revise and go back every day and revise revise and focus on what you've written the day before and like try and make it perfect, quote unquote, then maybe think about your priorities and your goals for completing NaNoWriMo. This blog made the really great point of, instead of going back to make the revision when the idea comes to you, make a note of that. Make a note of that idea and write it down somewhere so that you don't forget it necessarily. Not like in the manuscript, but maybe outside, just to keep it separate from the parts that you're writing forward and the parts that you're continuing in your manuscript with your specific word count. To that end, there was also this article that talked about breaking these 3 writing habits to like move forward and to achieve your NaNoWriMo goals. And one of them that I thought was super interesting was to stop overlaps in the stages of your writing process. It's common for writers to do research while they're already like writing the thing, while they're already moving forward and writing during NaNoWriMo. They made the really interesting point that it seems harmless, but in reality, it's apparently hurting your cognition. Who knew? They chalked it up to like feeling more productive while multitasking can be an illusion. It's caused by the dopamine receptors released by your brain as it jumps from one task to the next. During that time, your brain merely moves from one focus point to the other, and it isn't processing all of the stimuli or the information that you're tapping into. And that was really interesting, because I've found that jumping around has helped me a lot for my writing process, and especially when I've done NaNoWriMo in the past. But I think that when I really get into it, when I really get into my writing, that I do usually put a stop to the research, and I do usually put a stop to like all the outside information that I can gather in order to focus on my goal and in order to focus on like, you know, reaching the 50k words. I wrote a note here that says, do I agree with this? No. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I kind of do. For all the writers who do research while they're writing, like while they're doing NaNoWriMo still, I would love to know your thoughts on that. Like, is it hurting your brain? Is it hurting your productivity? I don't know. I'd love to know. The last main tip that I read while reading all these different articles was mainly about focusing on your goal and breaking down your work or your writing into like bite-sized pieces and having a plan that goes along with that. I know I mentioned like plotters and plantsers earlier and pantsers. It's really interesting to me when I think about the term discovery writing. I feel like that definitely falls into like the plantsing camp. But more than that, I think that it's more about like preserving your writing, preserving your time to write. You don't necessarily have to make a note of like everything that you want to include in your novel, right? But you do want to mark out the time that you want to write, and you do want to mark out like where you're gonna write, and at least like some goal, even if that goal is just, hey, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna write words right here, right now, before work, on the train, after work, in the middle of lunch, etc. Wherever you find yourself, make a goal and make a plan. And again, that plan can be as simple as, I'm gonna attempt to write. There was this article that made a really great point about preserving your space more, had a lot of great tips for, you know, cleaning off your desk, removing distractions, picking your music, using noise canceling headphones, and just like making your space as comforting and as you as it possibly can. Maybe writing on the train won't necessarily work for that, but like if if that's your routine and if you want to build it into your routine, then I say go for it. Just make sure that you have some kind of plan. I feel like a lot of the times when I jump into writing, I don't necessarily know what's going to come next. That can be a good or bad thing, but if I do know like a vague idea of the overarching story and the overarching theme, then that always helps me in the long run. Again, that also folds into like keeping momentum and like going forward. I think it was an article from the Save the Cat author who said, you don't need an outline, you only need 5 things. And those would be brainstorming like 5 random things about your main character, about your plot, and about your world before you start writing. That way, nothing's concrete, nothing's set in stone. You can always change them, of course, later. But as long as you have like an idea, I think is the main thing. As long as you have an idea of what you want to write and how you're going to write and where you're going to write, the idea that you want to write, that's enough. That can be enough to push your story forward and to push you forward into completing your goal for NaNoWriMo. A lot of this advice seemed very similar to me, and I think that's a good thing because, you know, at a certain point, we're all writers and we all know how to write, basically, but it's tips like this that can enhance like the writing process for you, for me, for anybody. It's tips like this that make NaNoWriMo worthwhile, I think. I know here on authortube that the writing process is so transparent and can be so overwhelming at times. So for me, it's good to know that a lot of the same authors and the same writers are on the same page about, at least NaNoWriMo, if not anything else, about working on your book, about writing as a whole. I think that that's a good thing, that writing doesn't have to be this mysterious way anymore, right? Writing doesn't have to be this mysterious person locked up in a cupboard or like an attic. I don't know. Writing by like the light of their candle, you know? All the myths can be debunked. As with this NaNoWriMo advice that I just read, it literally took me 2 hours. There's so much advice, so much to cover, but like so much good advice, so much good advice. And sure, maybe it's objective, maybe it's not gonna be the same impact for everybody else, but I hope that you at least got some great tips and that you're able to take away some knowledge and some information about, especially if you're stuck with NaNoWriMo and especially if you're stuck with getting your way to 50,000 words this month. I hope that this video was useful to you, and if you want more tips, if you want more NaNoWriMo advice that I didn't cover in this video, please go ahead and give this video a like and a subscribe. I'd really appreciate it to help grow my channel and to help make more videos like this. Again, good luck to everybody participating in NaNoWriMo. I'm totally late for my Twitch stream right now, and happy writing. Bye everybody.